Hello, everyone. Let me welcome you on our last SIG core meeting this year. Today we have 2 points on our agenda. Two of them will be presented by Łukasz Górnicki. At the beginning, we'll start with the summary of the year for the whole Kyma project. After that, the last but not least, is really important topic about changing the current asset store and headless CMS to become a Rafter project. So Łukasz will discuss that in details in a minute. But before we start with our meeting, just please add yourself under the attendees list. And let's start with the first point on our agenda. So the question, the feedback. If you have something that you want to share with us or just want to ask a question, now is a really nice time to do it. Okay, so I see that no one has any questions, so let's go further. And Łukasz, stage is yours. Let's start with the summary of this year.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Let me first start the presentation. So just to clarify, it's not a recap of the whole Kyma, just some numbers and core SIG summary. But first, let me see if I can. If I can share the presentation. Can you see it?
Yes. Kyma summary slide.
Oh, seriously, I made it for the first time. Awesome. So some numbers. Core SIG, as you know, it's a kind of point of contact between us and you, the community. So we not only meet with you, some of us also do communication over different channels. So we have first some summary of the numbers on of the adoption of Kyma and growing interest. So I guess that some numbers will be interesting for you. So that the whole year the Twitter followers were growing, and the same went with the GitHub stars. The newest we have is 809, so it's slowly going up. The YouTube subscribers, it's good, it's growing, so it means that the recording from SIG core meetings are watched regularly, which is very good. And the most important channel for you is the Slack. We see the growing number of members and very good number of messages coming into the Slack. So just remember that we're always there. Whenever we don't have an online meeting, you need to ask question, use our Slack. And the most important numbers about core SIG summary. So this year we had 16 meetings, which I think it's pretty good, knowing that at least 2 of them were cancelled because we were then on KubeCon. So all the leaders of the SIG there are 4 of us. We've been to KubeCon Barcelona and KubeCon San Diego. And also interesting is that members of this core SIG also attended 4 different events as presenters. So we are present on SoapConf in Krakow, Cloud Native Warsaw, Helm Summit in Amsterdam, for example, talking about Helm Broker, API Specifications Conference in Vancouver, and the last event we attended as speakers. Our core SIG member, Mateusz, also presented at KubeCon in San Diego. So that's it if it comes to the numbers related to core SIG. And for the community, what we achieved this year was a community subpage where you can learn everything about contributing to Kyma. We also improved, based on your feedback, the landing page to make it more developer friendly. We also have a dedicated roadmap view since this year to transparently tell you what we're working on, the most important features. We have also a self-service now if it comes to adding your logo and the description to the landing page. We already got a few users thanks to it, and we already have in pipeline another request, a pull request from one of the company to be added to the landing page. And last but not least, remember that we also enabled you to write blog posts as guests in our Kyma project IO blog. We had one post done by guests this year, and the second one will be, hopefully, everything is scheduled for this Friday. It's going to be a blog post from one of our users about the use cases they built with Kyma. And that's pretty much it. If it comes to the summary, what we did for you to enable you to work with Kyma, let us know whenever you want on Slack or any other channel if you would have some suggestions what we could do for you in 2020. That's it from my side. If it comes to the first topic, I guess I can switch to the next one, right?
Yes, let's proceed.
Yeah, just a second, because for the second one, I don't have slides. Un momento, per favor. No, that's not the one. Sorry. I think it's the one. What can you see on the screen?
Issue on the GitHub.
No, so it's not.
Sorry, pull request. Sorry, it's a pull request.
Yeah, so that's a pull request with the blog post from Netconomy, but that's not what I wanted to share. Just give me a second. What? I think the agenda, that's what you see?
Yes.
Perfect. So the next topic is the goodbye to Asset Store and Headless CMS. So we are now, like last month, we released Kyma 1.8. The 1.9 is scheduled for the beginning of next year, but we're cutting out the release branch Friday or next Monday, something like this. But anyway, so 1.9 is coming in, and what I'm gonna show you now is something that is coming with 1.9. If we make it, so not everything is yet in master, but I'm pretty sure we're gonna make it for 1.9. So yeah, Asset Store and Headless CMS. So before I jump into details, let me first explain, because the Asset Store and Headless CMS, these names are not so commonly widely known to Kyma users, because they are really core components sitting at the bottom of the stack and are used by some of the components. So the names are not very familiar. So just to explain by showing some UI, I'm going to explain you what those components are used for. So for example, whenever you're in the console and you by accident click on the question mark, you figure out that it's not a typical help, but actually a link to a documentation of Kyma for a given version of Kyma. So you don't have to go to Kyma project.io to read the whole internet. You can just access the docs for your version of Kyma in the UI. So Headless CMS and Asset Store are for example, are the components that extend Kubernetes API and provide this functionality that we are able to feed them with Markdown files, and then through the API consume them in the UI to render them for you as a documentation. The other use case where Headless CMS and Asset Store are used is the one of the namespaces. So you know the concept of the service catalog. So we enrich the usual Kubernetes service catalog with additional content for service classes and service instances once they are created with additional content, additional documentation. So if you have a service that exposes API or just have a static doc, you can enrich it using those asset store and Headless CMS components. So that's one use case, and the third one is also the the documentation for the service classes are used not only by the Helm broker component of Kyma, but also the application connector. So whenever you register your external application that you want to extend in Kyma, and you provide some specs like Async API or Open API, they are also processed and stored using Asset Store and Headless CMS. So that's it if it comes to by the way, what are those? And now why they are gone. First of all, I think you noticed that whenever I was now explaining them, I was kind of mentioning both at the same time. First of all, we didn't want to keep both of them anymore because it was really hard to explain both. That was one of the main reasons why we decided to consolidate them under one umbrella project. The second reason was that because of this complication and the fact that we had two separate components, we also consumed more resources because, for example, we had two separate control managers, which didn't make sense. We also wanted to get rid of it and have really one single component that is capable of to handle different use cases simply. So there were those two reasons, the problems with explaining and also the resources consumption. And the third one was that we knew that this component can be used independently without Kyma. So we wanted to also check if it could get wider adoption if we pull it out from Kyma repository. So that's also what we did last month. We took the source code of Asset Store and Headless CMS, merged it together, and moved it to a separate repository under Kyma project.io. And because they were merged and separately they had different use cases, that's why we provided a new name for the project, and that's how Rafter came into the world. And with this 1.9 release, it basically means that we remove Asset Store and Headless CMS components, and we replace them with this old new component called Rafter. But we are not providing any new features or anything like that. It's rather some renaming of the custom resources. Some resources from Headless CMS were removed and renamed to more generic one. Now, if it comes to to Rafter itself, just to remind again, it's nothing new. It's basically Asset and Headless CMS altogether. So it's at the end, it's a cloud native S3-like file store. So I think the most important in the README of the Rafter, you can see two sections that we've added recently. So what Rafter is not and what Rafter can be used for. Because as a file store, it can serve many different purposes, many different use cases. So, but it's definitely not a content management system as you may know, for example, as WordPress or anything like that. It's definitely not a solution that you can use as an enterprise content management to manage content of huge websites or whatsoever. And the Rafter itself, it's a backend only for files management. So we don't provide at the moment any out-of-the-box UI to modify and manage the files in Rafter. And what can it be used for? So at the end, you know what Kyma is. Kyma, it's a platform built on top of Kubernetes to provide, to make it much easier to extend applications with Kubernetes. So whenever we're adding features to Kubernetes, we're obviously doing it with a Kubernetes native way. And for us, it's always custom resources to extend Kubernetes API. And because Rafter, it's one of those components that extends Kubernetes with custom resources, that's when it always should be used for. So only really for by developers that are building some extensions or building some solutions on top of Kubernetes, only they should use Rafter. And we discovered 2 use cases for Rafter that one of them we are using already for 6 months in Kyma. It's we call it a headless CMS concept. So you can, because Rafter can take your file, your content, save it to the storage, but also it has this unique functionality that before it's stored, the content is stored, the file is stored, you can programmatically provide some services that modify selected content or validate the selected content. Then it basically means that you don't only have a file store, you also get a kind of file management solution that you can modify those files before they are stored. So it's a typical use case for headless CMS concept. And that's what we're using, for example, in application connector that I showed you in the UI. That, for example, you register your application, you provide your async API spec, for example, but you can provide it in old version, and we use Rafter and helper extensions to, for example, modify and convert the old version into the new one, so the users don't have to do it. And last but not least, something that we explore, would love to have your input here, Rafter, because it's like S3-like store, so it can also host files like HTML, CSS, or JavaScript. So basically, Rafter can also be used also as a hosting solution for client-side applications. And we also provided a simple example for really simple use case that proves it's possible. So that's what Rafter is not and what can be used for. And most important is that we provided some simple interactive tutorials using Katacoda for Rafter. You can try them on your own if you want. So it's pretty easy to use. The first step is the installation. So as interesting. Let me refresh the page because I had it open for some time.
Łukasz, you need to wait some time because they are preparing the environment.
Yeah, but it never took so long. Okay, so while it's preparing, important to know, and that's the first step that you cannot yet see, is that we already have a Helm chart for Rafter, so we can easily install it on Kubernetes if you're using Helm. And I guess we will have to skip the presentation to not keep you longer. Anyway, it would not be very entertaining because you can really go through it on your own. I would just click through the tutorials. So just mark this URL if you're interested with Rafter, the use case of hosting a website, client-side website with Rafter. The scenario is there with simple example. And also there are 2 use cases where you can see how we are able to manage files before they go into the storage. So there are 2 use cases. One of them is, for example, with the conversion of the async API spec. So the tutorials are pretty, as I said, they are interactive. So the first step, it's the Rafter installation. And then you just simply click on the commands one by one, step by step, to see at the end the final result, that everything works fine. So just to summarize, we are at this stage where we're pretty much ready to merge. So even though we are 2 days before cutting out the release branch, I'm still optimistic that we can make it with getting Rafter into Kyma for 1.9. And also in the release notes, you're gonna see a link and details about the demigration, because you can imagine that if we remove asset store and Headless CMS, we introduce Rafter instead, and some custom resources are renamed. We made sure that there's an automated migration prepared where we will convert your data into the, so they are supported by Rafter. That's it. Do you have any questions? That's perfect. I hope everything was clear. And going back to Mateusz.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lucas. So that was everything that we prepared for that SIG, but maybe you have some additional questions or provide a feedback to Łukasz. If not, yeah, then I think that we can just summarize that SIG and just wish you a really good Christmas time, and also we'll back to you in a new 2020. And I think that in 2 weeks the SIG core will be skipped because of the holidays and the New Year. So let's see you on probably in 3 or 4 weeks. We keep you updated on our public Slack channels. So once again, thank you very much, and see you in the next year.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.